right. Okay. One more welcome to everybody in the room and online. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sharon Chinthrajah. I co-direct the Shawn and Parker Center for Allergy and Asthma Research here at Stanford University. And I'm so excited that my friend and colleague, Dr. Carina Venter, is here with us today. She doesn't really need much of an introduction. She knows people in this room, and our team here knows her work and is a well-known, world-renowned expert here. She's a professor of pediatric allergy at the University of Colorado and Children's Hospital, Colorado. And she's an amazing dietitian, educator, advocate for people suffering from food allergies and wanting to know how to do healthy introduction of food and actually just healthy foods in general for everybody. She is pioneering research on the role of nutrition in shaping the immune system and the gut microbiome. And I'm really excited to hear what she has to share. She is probably most famous for co-authoring many guidelines, American, European, Canadian, on food allergy prevention, and really exploring how diet influences the atopic march, allergies, eczema, asthma. And I'm so excited to hear what you have to share with us today. Thank you.
Sharon. Thank you for that introduction. And I must say, I grew up in a very small town in South Africa, and I watched all the movies and saw Stanford University on all these American movies. Never thought one day I'd be standing here. Huge honor for me to present to you today. And we'll be talking about immunonutrition, feeding the skin, the gut, and immune system. I know the program allows for an hour and a half, but it's okay. I am not going to talk for that long. And I hope we'll have some question and answer discussions later as well. And today I'll be talking about the role of immunonutrition in pregnancy on allergy prevention, and then also the role of immunonutrition in infancy and childhood on allergy prevention and also allergic disease management. And so that the picture there is an open access paper I wrote with a colleague of mine, Pete Smith from Australia, and just gives a nice overview of all the aspects of immunonutrition. So the first thing we're going to focus on is pregnancy and to look at the role of diet diversity, particularly in pregnancy on the child microbiome, because I'll touch on the microbiome, the immune system. And then also I have some very exciting data, at least I think, about the skin. And I would like to ask people not to take any pictures of my slide when I get to the skin. And if you are online, please don't take any screenshots, but I'm very happy to present here today. The rest of the presentation I have published already. So in 2013, Caroline Rudet from Switzerland published the first paper on diet diversity or food diversity in terms of allergy outcomes. And I'd go to these conferences and everybody's quoting Caroline's work and saying that diet diversity is the way to go. Food diversity is the new hot topic in allergy prevention. And then, because I do ask all the awkward questions, I get up and say to the speaker, excuse me, what does diet diversity mean? And they would just look at me blank. And many of them said to me, but you're the dietitian, don't you know? And I just said, no, I don't know either. I then got a European Academy of Allergy and Clinical Immunology task group together. I know we live in America. I think the American Academy and College are wonderful societies to belong to, but if nutrition is really your interest, do make sure that you sign up for the combined membership between IACI and the American Academy, because we do a lot of work focusing on nutrition and immunonutrition. But I got this group of 33 experts around the world together. And we wrote this position paper after reviewing many papers and doing a systematic review. And really we came to the conclusion that diet diversity can be defined as the number of foods or food groups given over a period of time. And so what you can do is you can count number of fruit and vegetables eaten over pregnancy. You can count number of allergens eaten in the last week. As long as you're just very clear about what you're counting and how long. You can even count number of pizzas eaten over the course of pregnancy. And I actually did that, and I'll share you the data later on. And then we wanted first, then one of the things, Chesma acted as a world-renowned scientist and allergist from Switzerland, but then he said to me, Carina, but what is the mechanism? How is it possible that diet diversity can affect allergy outcomes? And so at the time, we thought they'd possibly go through changes in the microbiome. And so there's only 2 papers ever published that look at maternal diet diversity or healthy eating in pregnancy and in the infant gut microbiome. So this is my own data, and you will see the green bars show lower diet diversity at 1 month of age in children of mothers who had a more diverse or a healthier diet in pregnancy. And throughout the rest of my talk, you will hear that really what we want in the microbiome is high microbiome diversity, but not at 1 month. At 1 month, we want low microbiome diversity. So this is exactly what we wanted to see looking at alpha and beta diversity in the gut microbiome. But you want the low diversity, but you don't want the low diversity to be indicated because you have overpopulation of Staph aureus or E. coli. What you want is low diversity with a lot of bifidobacteria, because this is what we see in children that was born vaginally, as well as children that exclusively breastfed up to that point. And so again, I know it's small to see and the numbers are small, but we do show that the mothers with the healthier index, because they had more vegetables, more daily vegetables, and more fermented food or yogurt intake, those children had more bifidobacteria in their gut microbiome. So that's really what we wanted. And we actually corrected for mode of delivery as well as mode of feeding. And so the positive message about this is, because I was trying it, all my research I planned because of a question somebody asked me that I couldn't answer, or somebody crying in my office. And so for me, that's a really positive message we can give to pregnant women, that we all want to have vaginal deliveries and we all want to breastfeed, but for some of us, it just doesn't work out. And you end up with that C-section 5 to 12 at night, or breastfeeding doesn't work out the way you want it to. But you can actually mitigate those negative effects by just having a healthy, diverse diet in pregnancy. But some studies are really difficult to do. I have been applying for grants to the NIH for as long as I can remember to try and do a maternal intervention. I'm not sure if it's ever going to happen, but the second best thing is to say this is an index developed in America. It's calculated in a Spanish cohort. Now let's see if we can get some data from Asia that can actually replicate the findings, because their diet is so very different. But if they can show the same thing, then at least we know that they've proven this whole concept of diversity really works. And so this is data from a group in Asia where they actually showed exactly, they even used the same colors as my paper. The exact same things. When the mothers had a more diverse diet during pregnancy, in their cohort, they didn't see significant, but again, they consistently saw healthier diet, more diversity, which they saw lower gut microbiome diversity with this children at 2 to 3 months of age. So that was really good to get the replication data from Asia. And it's actually a group from Thailand. So now we have some mechanistic data to show that perhaps biodiversity may beneficially change at least the gut microbiome. What do we see when we look at clinical outcomes? And so this is my data from Colorado, and the bottom 3 lines, you can look at total biodiversity, healthy and unhealthy diversity in pregnancy. I'm just showing you the eczema data here, or the atopic dermatitis, just because the slide is too busy. But we saw the same pattern for all allergic outcomes. And so when we count diet diversity in infancy, which I'll show you later, we literally just count every food the kids eating, because we only ask the mothers, do they eat vegetables and fruit and yogurts and stuff? But in pregnancy, when I counted overall diet diversity, we found that there was no significant effect with allergy outcomes. And I was really very disappointed, thinking, why don't we actually see this association with total diet diversity? And so what I'm going to say reflects about what I just think about the microbiome. So one night while I was fast asleep, I'm thinking, hang on, when we count total diet diversity in pregnancy, we actually count everything the woman ate, the burgers, the pizzas, the fruit, the vegetables. And if you put healthy and unhealthy in one basket, then no surprise you see nothing. And so the next morning, I have amazing biostatisticians, and I have to thank them for everything I present here today. The next morning, I said to them, we've got to divide these foods up. We need to count the healthy ones and we need to count the unhealthy ones. And so when we did that, we saw a significant reduction in allergic outcomes counting the healthy foods eating over pregnancy. But what's even more significant was when we counted the unhealthy food, we saw an increase in allergic outcomes. So once again, we got this eating more healthy and diverse, less allergies, eating more diverse, unhealthy foods, we're now seeing more allergies. And we basically also published this data because then there's reviewers. You think you publish something wonderful, and the reviewers always want something else, something more. So they say you show eating healthy or having a healthy diet, diversity, to reduce allergies. But have you ever heard of the healthy eating index? Of course I have. Have you ever heard of the Mediterranean diet? Of course I have. Now tell us whether you can do better. And so just again, a slide showing, and I know, that the numbers are small, but we showed that if you actually compare healthy diet diversity and the maternal diet index, the one at the top, healthy diet diversity at the bottom, they actually do better than when you look at the healthy eating index and the Mediterranean diet index for allergy outcomes. The maternal diet index, which is just another measure of measuring healthy diet diversity, actually did the best. And we focused there on looking at diversity of vegetables, fermented foods, and then also lower intake of unhealthy foods. So that by far was the index that performed better in terms of allergy reduction. And then, of course, the reviewer said, now you've showed this all in one cohort in the US, but what about other cohorts? So I had Carina again. She's the dietitian from Sweden. She spent 18 months with me. And so we looked at the North Pole cohort from Sweden. Now, I know we have a statistician in the room, but bear with me. So these mothers, we didn't really have a big difference or variance in their diet intake because in Sweden, most mothers eat healthy. And so we really had to create this extreme. And so then when we look at the top quartile of healthy eating versus the bottom quartile, we found that comparing the two quartiles, there was a 43% decreased risk of food allergy in the children whose mothers had the highest quartile of diet diversity versus the group where the mothers had the lowest quartile of diet diversity. And then following from that, I was very excited when I saw the data from Asia. Again, I love it when Asia, like I said, their diet intake is so different. And so they actually called it, they said the fruit odds ratio showed that the fourth quartile of nut, vegetables, fruit, and protein diet pattern was associated with reduced occurrence of childhood allergies. But we were talking about ChatGPT this morning. So I then actually look at all the foods that they counted in this diet pattern, and I said to ChatGPT, create infographic for me, which I double checked because ChatGPT can make up a lot of stuff. But when you actually look at what they call a diet pattern, this really is just a very diverse diet. And so once again, we now have data from Asia showing that having a more diverse diet in pregnancy lead to less childhood allergy outcomes. Now, the cohort from Thailand, where I showed you the microbiome data, this is the data where they actually showed that higher maternal diet diversity in Thailand was associated with reduced risk of atopic dermatitis. So then we did a systematic review. So I've published a number of systematic reviews in my life. There's nothing in my brain that's systematic. I absolutely hate writing them, but I think if I don't write them, nobody else is going to write them. We actually looked at all different kinds of maternal diet patterns, diet indices, diet diversity. And the only significance looking at all of that was that we found that maternal diet diversity and childhood food allergy showed a significant outcome using the data from my cohort in the US and the data from Stina in Sweden, because these other two studies weren't published at the time. So once again, at least giving out some hints that maternal diet diversity, just having a simple message of having a more varied diet in pregnancy can help us to reduce allergy outcomes. I think it's small numbers. You can just do studies in a systematic review, meta-analysis is really not great, but that was all we had at the time. And ideally, I think we need to follow it up with an RCT. But at least I feel now other than just saying to mothers in clinic, the guidelines say there's no need to reduce allergen intake or avoid allergens during pregnancy. At least I can now say if we can just focus on simply eating more healthy foods, not just having apples every day for a week and then bananas every day for a week, but really mixing the berries, the apples and the pears. Then there's some data from around the world now indicating that this higher diet diversity may help to reduce allergy outcomes in the infant. And again, I like positive messages. I think this is why I'm not a dietitian specializing in obesity, because I don't like saying you can't eat this, you can't eat that. I like to have more positive messages. So that's like the pregnancy summary. And now we can go on to infancy and childhood. And first, look again at the role of diet diversity in infancy on the infant microbiome and immune system. So this is just observational data, nothing to do with allergy, where they looked at as the child was transitioning from just formula or breast milk onto a more family-based diet. We found that as the diet diversity or family foods were increasing, and correlated really well with gut microbiome diversity. We also have data now, unpublished data, that actually shows that when you start with diet diversity, then the children stay on that 5 trajectory. So basically, as Margie is doing, if we can get families to introduce allergens and introduce foods right from the start, we can actually keep them on that 5 trajectory, opposed to the children where parents are very hesitant to introduce food and food allergens. And this is data from that very first study from Caroline Rade, where she showed that this increased diet diversity in the first year of life was associated with more diverse gut microbiome, more butyrate production, more T regulatory cells, cytokines, especially TGF-beta and IL-10, and then also less allergy outcomes. So for those of you that's not scientists in this room, you probably all are. Butyrate, we now at least think is like the magic word in the infant gut. If we have more butyrate, it helps to restore the epithelial barrier. I'm going to talk about the skin barrier in a bit. But if we have a healthy gut epithelial barrier and we have more butyrate and we have less allergy cells that wants to cause allergic, we have less cells that wants to cause allergic disease, then that is really ultimately what we want from having a good diet in pregnancy. But at the time, we really thought it is just about eating a more diverse diet. So more plant-based foods, more healthy foods. But then this paper, if you've ever heard me talk about the microbiome, you've definitely seen this slide before. I love this paper. It was published by Tom Morse from London. It's data from the EAT study. But if you look at the middle, I'm not sure if you can see. Oh, you can see. If you look there in the middle. As the children in the EAT study were eating more allergens, just focusing on the allergen intake, their gut microbiome diversity also increased Shannon diversity, and they also produced more acutes. And lactobacillus is a firmicute, and it's a very potent butyrate producer. So just increasing the allergen diversity has got a beneficial effect on the gut microbiome. And so there's more to allergens than just the protein in allergens. And then I did this study with Liam O'Mahony from University College Cork. Now, the beauty of this cohort from Cork was they were born just during the COVID epidemic. The lockdown regulations in Cork was very extreme. They've published other papers where they showed these kids were not hugged or held by another adult other than their parents until they were 12 months old. The only animals they ever came across were their own pets. And if they had no pets, there were no animal exposure because nobody went to a playground and nobody played. And the only other kids they were ever exposed to were their own siblings. And if they were the only child, then they had no exposure to siblings. And really fascinating data outside of allergy coming out, how these children don't have very good eye contact. Some of them had aim at speech delay just because they didn't get all the social input. But for us, on the other side, although sad, the beauty was it was almost like having a mouse model because we had no environmental noise affecting the kid's gut microbiome. And so we could really study what diet is. And so this is where I used the FFQ I was talking about this morning. And so what we saw with the FFQ was the food that most led to variants in the gut microbiome was very surprising. always the allergen. So it was soy, it was sesame, peanut, milk, and egg. Then beans also affected the gut microbiome because it's very high in fiber. Ghee, I was particularly excited about because ghee is almost one of the only foods that actually contain butyrate. So rather than having to make your own butyrate, now you're eating butyrate. And I've often said, I'll say this about my blueberry study in a little bit as well. But if I could make up data, this is what it would look like. And this is why we do double-blind studies and we have blinded statisticians analyzing the data. So that when we look at the data, we can proudly present it. But it's really fascinating data. And now when I see families, again, from a practical point about early allergen introduction, I say we want to get the allergenic proteins into tolerance. We also want to get the allergens in because they're beneficial to the gut microbiome to a great extent. And if we have more butyrate, it also helps with prevention of autism, ADHD, cancer. It's a widespread effect on disease prevention. And the other thing is, if you have a kid that's not growing well in a food allergy clinic, and I say, don't worry about fortifiers or additional formula, just get the allergen butters in. Next time that baby comes in, they're tall and they're beautiful and thriving. So many reasons of why in a food allergy clinic, I feel really good to get children to eat their allergens. And then, of course, data from the American Gut Study also showed that if you eat 30 different kinds of plant-based foods a week, that's when it's most beneficial for your gut microbiome. And so, again, I'm saying to the families, it doesn't have to be that complex, but just don't go and buy bananas week after week. We really want to just diversify the diet. So here's my blueberry data. So blueberry by far is my favorite fruit in the whole world. And so we did a randomized controlled trial with blinded statisticians analyzing the data and we fed children from 6 to 12 months of age blueberries daily, or a group where we asked the families not to eat them blueberries. And the blueberries were a dried blueberry powder. And so what happened in the active group was that we saw an increase in the butyrate producers, so short-chain fatty acids or butyrate producers. We saw less of the pro-inflammatory gut microbes in the gut. And we saw an increase in IL-10 and a reduction in IL-13, which is exactly what you want if you're trying to prevent allergies. So even just feeding a lot of perhaps the same vegetable or fruit can help to change the gut microbiome, but just think how much better it would be if the children have a diverse diet alongside that. So now then looking at the allergy outcomes and diversity. So again, looking at the guidelines, the American College and Canadian Society guidelines or position statement, at least, it's the only guideline or statement in the world that actually recommends that a diverse diet. And they say that upon introduction of complementary foods, infants should be fed a diverse diet, as that may help foster prevention of food allergy. Then when I talk about diversity, everybody says to me, but Carina, in America, the AP says you have to wait 3 to 5 days between each new food. And if you have to introduce new foods every day, or even apples for breakfast, banana for lunchtime, you are going against the AP. But the AAP did actually publish this book, Caring for Your Baby and Young Child. And in this book, they actually say that in the past, pediatricians used to recommend introducing one new food every 3 to 5 days. Newer evidence actually indicates that it's safe to introduce multiple foods at once. And just to give you a real practical example, if you start introducing solids at 6 months, I know we say 4 months if they're ready, but if we take 6 months as a cutoff, you can introduce 180 foods between 6 to 12 months if you do one new food a day. If you wait 4 days, you can only do 45 foods. And you can see how that can actually affect diversity. Now, I don't know about you, Margie. I've never seen a 12-month-old eating 180 foods. I think that's a bit far-fetched, but I think it is just showing you the two extremes. And if we actually let babies eat according to the family and let them open up the diet rather than be so regimented, we can get many more foods into their diet. So this is my data from England, where I counted biodiversity using the WHO definition. We count the number of fruits, number of vegetables, number of allergens, number of foods. I'm not showing you all the data today, but consistently, it doesn't matter how we count healthy food, we saw a reduction in allergy. And so what we showed was that each additional food given between 4 and 6 months, every food brought the risk of food allergy down by 11%. And for every allergen we gave by 12 months, every additional allergen reduced the risk of food allergy by 10 years with about a third. So again, food diversity count, but allergen diversity is just as important, if not more important. And then the systematic review was published. It wasn't one of mine. So they analyzed 17 high-quality studies looking at diversity in infancy. And they said that, again, consistently they found that increased food diversity prevents food allergies. It was a little bit more mixed for asthma and atopic dermatitis, but definitely for food allergy, a very strong signal. Then the reviewer said to me, did you know that if you open our baby's diets very early on and give them a diverse diet, they become obese? And my daughter, Manzi, she was the first author of this paper. She analyzed the data. She was going to be a biostatistician. Then I sent her to UNC Chapel Hill, and now she wants to be a doctor. So I'm blaming Edwin Kim for that. But what we showed was it doesn't matter how we looked at the data. We looked at weight per height at 1 and 2 years. We looked at BMI trajectories up to 10 years of age. There was no signal that increasing diversity from 4 months on actually led to obesity or even overweight in the children. So I think another good message, we can relax and let the baby eat. So this is just a very practical, you don't have to worry about the detail on the slide, but just to say, so all the families I see when I do simple prevention, the allergens in to get 30 plant-based foods in, and I adapt it for every family. And if the children already have allergies, I still do a diet diversity menu plan. So this kid was allergic to milk, egg, and hazelnut, so I actually take those out. But then I still make sure I get the other allergens in, and I get 30 plant-based foods a week in. And I'll stop for 2 minutes, but there's not 2 minutes, but there's QR codes to download some diet diversity meal plans, which again have to be adapted for every family, but at least I took cultural eating habits. And my colleagues from Mexico and from Hong Kong and around Asia and India helped me to actually make this more culturally appropriate. And we already talked a lot about that this morning, but milk and egg ladders, they are dangerous. Like OIT, we have about 25% children react, as we would see in OIT study. But we can actually make ladders safer when we standardize them. And so this I have actually published in Pediatric Allergy and Immunology about 2 weeks ago, where we've now actually looked at the BOS-D5 and BOS-D11, so the beta-lactoglobin in milk food. And we already spotted we made one big mistake by just jumping from a pancake to raw cheese. And again, that jump from a pancake to raw cheese is just too much. We also didn't actually see much difference between eating a muffin and a pancake, where we actually did think we'll see a big jump. And so with Nandini Patel, who's coming to visit you soon, and Paul Turner in London, we did additional analysis of foods, and we're just about to publish that. And the new ladder probably would have some cookies or biscuits, then a muffin and a pancake, even in the same step. You could actually add microwave cheddar at that point if you wanted. Then you can go to strongly heated milk or cheese, for example, like rice pudding or pizza or bechamel sauce. At this point, you could also put in microwave mozzarella. Then you can go for raw cheese, soft cheese like Philadelphia cheese. You can then put in a boiled milk step if you want it. And then we can have the heated cheese and also pasteurized milk and yogurt, not milk, and then milk here at the very end. So really just to say that we are doing a lot of work now on redeveloping ladders and making them safer. And then this is the egg ladder data, which I'm hoping to be accepted next week. It's just for final review, where we also created an egg ladder where we start with a cheesy cracker, then simple bread, then we have an apple and banana cookie, then we have lower dose muffins, higher dose muffins, Then we have the meatballs, and then we have the pancakes. So with the egg, you can see that there's a big difference between the allergenicity of a pancake versus a muffin, but not really with the milk ladder. And then we get the hard-boiled egg and also scrambled. Hard-boiled egg we put in there, but there's no of albumin in hard-boiled egg, no detectable. Because so if you have a child that's only of albumin sensitized, you probably could just do hard-boiled egg right from the beginning. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. I think we live in exciting times. You guys are at the forefront of the exciting times, teaching us so much about nutrition, the immune system, all these biologics that we now have in allergy. And this is me and Sharon. We also have some projects we work on, immunonutrition, the Grow Happy range. And I think we're in a time where we can give hope to families. We can't prevent allergies, and if things go wrong and they end up with an allergy, we can't treat it. We don't have to have 20-year-olds with milk allergy anymore when we know that we can probably cure it, if I can use it in inverted commas, from a very early age. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.